Part 6, Cultivating Observation. In addition to the general rules concerning observation which we have presented for your consideration, and in addition to that illuminating story of the pupil of Agassiz, we wish to direct your attention to several special exercises designed for the cultivation of the several particular forms of observation concerned with the 5 respective phases of sense perception. These exercises, however, are not presented as cut and dried methods, but rather are given as suggestive illustrations of certain effective forms of exercise and training along the special lines indicated. Sight observation. Exercises for the cultivation and training of perception and observation through the channels of the sense of sight fall into 2 general classes, viz. 1. Exercises for training sight observation along the lines of rapid perception, and 2. Exercises for training sight observation along the lines of full and comprehensive perception. It will be well for you to train your powers of sight observation along both of these lines, the ideal, of course, being that of comprehensive perception performed as rapidly as is consistent with efficiency. In exercises and methods along the lines of rapid visual perception, the main purpose is to develop the power of seeing clearly as many things or details as possible in one rapid though comprehensive glance. It is astonishing how greatly this power may be increased by deliberate exercise and practice. We have pointed out to you that young thieves are trained in this way by the master criminals. They are trained gradually, proceeding from simple tasks to more complex ones, the teachers proceeding according to strict scientific principles which they have learned by experience, while deploring the evil uses to which such principles have been prostituted. In such cases, we must admit their efficiency. The plan is as follows: a few small articles are shown to the student, and he is allowed to give to them but a single swift glance, endeavoring to note as many points as possible. At first, he is able to observe few objects and still fewer details, but from day to day he increases his capacity, until in a comparatively short time he is able to display almost incredible proficiency. Howden's method of passing rapidly before a shop window, observing as many objects or details as possible in a single glance, also serves as the basis of many exercises along this line. This exercise may be varied by rapidly noting the details of the dress of a passing person. Women usually have already developed marked proficiency in this direction. Interesting games have been invented for the purpose of developing this particular form of perception. One of them is performed as follows: place a number of small objects on a table, under a cloth, remove the cloth for a moment, and let the participants take a single glance at the objects, then replace the cloth. The participants must then each write down what they have observed. At first, they will be found to have observed very little, but after a little practice they will surprise themselves and the observers by their rapidly developing proficiency. In Italy, the little boys play a game called Maro, in which the same general principles are employed. One boy exhibits a closed fist, from which he suddenly extends one or more fingers. The other boy must state instantly the exact number of extended fingers, the penalty for failure being a sharp blow. This sounds as if the task were simple. We suggest that you play the game several times before passing final judgment. In other countries a similar game is played by the children, the principles of which are as follows. The first child places a number of dried peas or beans in his hand. The closed hand is held before the other child, and then suddenly open. The observing child must name exactly, and without a moment's hesitation, the number of objects in the hand, the penalty being a sharp slap on the cheek. Games of this kind develop marked powers of rapid sight perception on the part of the gamins playing them, which powers are often of benefit or service to them in the later years. Kipling gives an interesting and instructive illustration of a similar game in his story entitled Kim. The boy, Kim, and a native boy, are being trained by a master hand for the Indian Secret Service. Old Lurgan Sahib, the instructor, places 15 jewels on a tray, and bids the 2 boys to take a rapid but careful glance at them. The tray then being withdrawn, Kim, a novice, reports that he has seen on the tray 5 blue stones, 1 big, 1 smaller, and 3 quite small. He says that there were 4 green stones, and 1 with a hole in it, also 1 yellow stone that he could see through, and 1 stone like a pipe stem, also 2 red stones, and 1 ivory object, little and brownish. This is as far as Kim can go. The native child, who has received some previous training along the same lines, reports that on the tray he has perceived, first, 2 flawed sapphires, one of 2 ruddies and one of 4. As he should judge the 4 ruddy sapphires chipped at the edge, he saw also 1 Turkestan turquoise, plain with green veins, also 2 other stones inscribed, one with the name of God in gilt, the other, which had come from an old ring, being cracked across so that the inscription could not be read. He saw also 5 blue stones, 4 flamed emeralds, one drilled in 2 places, and one a little carved, in their weights being 3, 5, and 4 ruddies, respectively, so far as he could judge. He also saw 1 piece of greenish amber, and a cheap cut topaz from Europe, 1 ruby of Burma, of 2 ruddies, and without a flaw, and 1 Balas ruby, flawed, weighing 2 ruddies, also a carved ivory from China, representing a rat sucking an egg, and, finally, a ball of crystal as big as a bin, set in gold leaf. Old Lurgan Sahib, comforting the chagrined Kim, tells him that the secret consists in doing it many times over, till it is done perfectly, for it is worth doing. In this game there is material for an almost unlimited variety, and consequently of an almost unlimited interest, the latter being an important element of such Gamia exercises. Another Gamia exercise along the same general lines is that in which the participants are seated before a screen or curtain. The person behind the curtain, or screen, tosses up an object which, of course, is seen only for a moment by those in front. The latter write down a statement of what they have seen, the one having the best total average winning the game. In case of skilled players, several objects may be tossed up at one time. Another game is that in which the observer is asked to name correctly the total number of spots on a domino displayed for a moment, then of 2 dominoes, and then of a greater number as the skill of the players increases. Similarly, the observer may be asked to name correctly the color, suit and number of spots on a playing card shown him for a moment, the number of cards then being added to. Likewise, the observer may be asked to name as many words as possible of a printed page presented to his view for a moment. The principle in all such formal methods of exercise or Gamia exercises in rapid sight observation, is the same, viz., that of observing rapidly and comprehensively an object or number of objects presented to the view for a brief period of inspection. Skill is attained only by practice and experiment. A surprising degree of skill and efficiency in this direction results from even a moderate amount of practice and exercise. As we have said, the element of interest should be introduced into the exercises so far as is possible, for it is the keystone of the art of observation. Exercises and methods designed for the cultivation and training of the power of comprehensive sight observation proceed along the same general lines indicated in the preceding pages, i.e., along the lines of practice and exercise of the perceptive faculty involved, proceeding from the simple to the complex, from the easy to the more difficult feats. In this class of exercises, however, the element of time of rapidity of perception is not the dominant one. The element of comprehensiveness, completeness, and inclusiveness is the important one. The idea here is not how rapidly, but how thoroughly one perceives and observes. The following typical exercises will illustrate the general principle involved in all methods of this class. Go into a room in which there are no other persons present, taking your time for the observation. Note the details of the room and its furnishings, writing down on paper that which you observe. Take note of the approximate size of the room, its shape, the location of the windows and doors, the alcoves, if any, then note the details of the papering, the color of the wood of the doors, window frame, and panel. Note the furniture in pictures, the carpets or rugs, and similar items of furnishings or decoration. In short, note anything and everything concerning the room and its contents. A day or so later, repeat the process. You will find that many little things have been omitted from your first list. Remember, the experience of Agassiz's pupil. Yours will be similar. Or, following the same general plan, carefully observe some small object, again bearing in mind the pupil of Agassiz and his method. Some time after, repeat the process and discover how many points you missed the first time. Or, in the same way, take a short walk, mentally noting the buildings, details of paving, and the 1001 things which you perceive when your attention is directed toward them. In all probability you will discover that you have really known very little about the house in which you live. Try to draw a rough picture of it, including the location and shape of its doors and windows, its rooms, its cornice, its steps, its porch, its chimneys. You will be surprised to discover how little you had previously observed concerning the house, though you may have lived in it for many years. Or, again, walk through a park or bit of woods, noting the different kinds of trees and plants coming under your interested observation. In all of these exercises you will do well to use the pencil for writing down names, and for drawing outlines, maps, etc. The pencil is a wonderful aid to perception. Refer to the previously mentioned statement of Maupassant, in which he tells how Flaubert instructed him in the art of observing persons and things. Note his statement that there are no two things exactly alike, each thing is a little different. Then try to discover by observation those particular distinguishing points of difference. Note also Chester's advice to would-be writers, in it the same principle is emphasized. Another writer has said that every individual may be described in a single paragraph. Try to so observe that you may write that paragraph concerning the person under observation. Start a paragraph record of your friends and acquaintances. It will be extremely interesting, and very instructive. We might fill page after page with exercises and methods of practicing this form of perception and observation through the sense of sight, but the general principle involved in each would be the same. We have sought to impress this principle upon you in the foregoing statements and typical exercises. In practicing the above suggested exercises, or any of your own along the same lines, you must not lose sight of the general rules of observation stated in the preceding section of this book. These rules apply in all cases coming under your observation. Above all, remember the tale of the pupil of Agassiz, hearing observation. In developing and training perception and observation through the channels of the sense of hearing, the general principles of sight observation should be observed, the only difference being that instead of seeing things attentively you hear them in that way. Listen to what is going on around you. When you wish to exercise and practice in this way, there are plenty of things to hear, if you will turn your attention to them. Refer to the previous section of this book, in which we have called your attention to the efficient auditory perception of persons in different occupations requiring the same. This will give you a clearer idea of the character of the tasks you should set yourself in this work. You will not suffer from lack of material for your exercises. Never fear. You will learn something by closing your eyes and trying to locate and know things through the attentive sense of hearing. Study the voices of persons, noting their accent, tones, and personal characteristics. You may learn readily to determine the nationality of different speakers, and even to tell from what particular part or section of your own country they have come. Study the sounds of the footsteps of different persons. You will soon discover that there is character in footsteps, as well as mere physical habit. When you attend concerts and musical recitals, practice listening to one particular instrument, shutting from your attention all the other instruments. In short, if you wish to cultivate and train your powers of hearing observation, begin to take an interest in sounds, tones, voices and other forms of impressions concerned with the sense of hearing. This will set into operation the attention, which in turn will awaken new interest, and so on. Interest is the first step, and probably the most important one. Tasting and smelling observation. We do not think it necessary to go into details concerning the cultivation and training of the power of taste or smell perception and observation. The general principles previously mentioned apply equally in the present case. Interest, attention, use, practice, and exercise. The employment of these will bring the desired end and result. An interesting experiment in taste perception is that in which, while a bottle of perfume is held under his nose, a blindfolded person is asked to distinguish between the taste of several familiar foods placed in his mouth. The distraction of his sense of smell from the food will be found to affect materially the clearness of his taste perception. Testing the sense of smell when a person is blindfolded will also show how poorly that sense is developed in most persons, and at the same time will furnish an excellent method of developing and training that particular sense perception. Blindfold an habitual smoker who is a good judge of tobacco, and also placed cotton batting in his nostrils. Then let him try to report the quality of the tobacco he is smoking, by taste alone. The result in most cases is surprising. Touch perception and observation should proceed along all of the several lines mentioned in our previous consideration of the sense of touch. You should learn effectively to distinguish between the different perceptions in the following classes, viz. 1. The perception of minute objects or parts of objects. 2. The perception of the details of composition, arrangement, or relations of the parts of objects, including the qualities of hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, etc., and 3. The perception of differences in temperature. In this connection, practice and exercise directed toward the cultivation and training of the muscular sense is important and interesting. Such exercises and training may proceed along the lines of developing the perception of weight, size, pressure, resistance, form, shape, etc., and as well in the development of skill in using tools, instruments and similar appliances. Manual training in all of its forms is valuable training, not only in itself and for its immediate results, but also by reason of the fact that it tends to develop and train certain very important brain areas, and thus to render one more generally efficient along many lines of mental work and activity. Expectant attention. Your consideration of the subject of the training and cultivation of efficient perception and observation will be incomplete if you fail to note the part expectant attention plays in the process of perception. Let us illustrate expectant attention as follows. You have read the preceding page. Did you notice whether the letter M occurred frequently or seldom in its lines? Did that letter appear there at all? You cannot answer these questions without referring to the page itself. You are not looking for M's, and so cannot with certainty say anything concerning the appearance of that letter on that particular page. Now then, glance over the page, with the letter M in mind, and note how this letter literally stands out in each line. Why? Because you are looking for it this time. Your expectant attention has been directed toward it. The above illustrates the principle of expectant attention, i.e., that we see that for which we look, and which is in our mind. The moral is, keep in mind that which you are looking for. This is the mental preparation for the perceptive task and should be noted and applied in every deliberate act of attention and perception, as well as in all manifestation of observation. As Case says, the mind, as well as the eye, perceives only that which it possesses the power to perceive. You daily fail to perceive many things simply because you have not prepared your mind to look for them, and to recognize them when they are found. In such cases, you are really absent-minded so far as those unperceived things are concerned. You will do well to fix this fact in your memory, and understanding it is an important one.